Good afternoon and welcome to the Living Well program. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also listen live online at katb.org. You can always find us on our Facebook page at Living Well Radio. And as always, last but not least, please do download our podcast available on iTunes. Just search for Living Well and look for Bossy Betty's face and you'll see our...
Some things never change.
Podcast available right there. It always amazes me when I see Bossy Betty's face pop up on iTunes.
Listen at this. Okay, it's the last show of the year, 2018, a New Year's resolution, no more Bossy Betty.
No more? Okay.
I don't think I'm bossy anyway.
I don't see you as Bossy Betty.
No, you're just a fantastic delegator.
That's
That's
right.
a nice way of putting it.
It's my gifting.
Mm-hmm. I've never thought you were Bessie. I just like bossy.
Bessie.
See, you ruined me. You've said Bessie so many times. Now it's sticking. Yeah, no, definitely not.
No.
Oh, my goodness. It is nearly the end of the year.
Can you believe it?
I really can't.
I can't either. Where did the time go?
You know, it's been nearly 2 years we've been in the studio now.
That is even more amazing to me.
I keep thinking we're still in our first year, but we've actually got 2 years cataloged back. So that's super exciting.
And people actually are listening.
Yes.
I love the comments we get.
Great.
It lets me know somebody's listening.
Super fun. Even if it is just Shaylee.
Do you give her a prize?
Yes. She posts great reviews for us. Anyhow, we're super excited to kind of bring out this year and kind of close 2017 and welcome in the new. And we've got our good friend Renee Duncan joining us here in the studio. Say hi to everybody, Renee.
Hello, everybody. I hope your year ended with a bang and not a bust.
Yeah, ooh, very good. I like it. Good statement. But we just thought we'd get together. You know, we're just kind of chatting before we got started here. We're all walking in a little bit different season of life and just experiencing different things in our daily routines, and thought we'd kind of come together and just have a good conversation about those things and just see where it leads. And we hope you guys tune in and can enjoy it.
And maybe relate.
Absolutely. That's really the ultimate goal, is just to know that somebody's out there and can relate to whatever it is you might be going through, good, bad, or ugly, as Betty would say.
Yeah. Or indifferent.
Or indifferent. Betty, I want to ask you, you went home recently.
I did.
And you kind of had, that was an emotional time for you.
It was. I was shocked at my reaction to leaving. I find it interesting that I was born in North Carolina and raised in Tennessee, and I had never left home until the day I got married. Wow. And I've never been back for any length of time except to visit. And so I guess, you know, I've been in Alaska longer than I've been anyplace else. I've been here almost 22 years, but I still think of Tennessee, North Carolina as my home. And I had some really interesting things happen this time when I went back. I had one of my uncles had passed away, and I was very close to his daughter, and I hadn't seen her. I was not able to go to the funeral, so we had made arrangements to meet up to have dinner. And so while I was talking with her, someone came up behind me and hugged me. And I turned around, and there was the group of girls I graduated high school with. And keep in mind, and I cannot believe I can say this, it's been 40 years since I had seen them. But
you know, you're not supposed to respond that way.
I know. But it's true. You know, for me to say 40 years ago I was alive is like, whoa. But, you know, thanks to Facebook, they still recognized me. And so that was a really sweet thing that happened, that those girls came up and talked to me. And what they do is they get together once a month, because a lot of them still live there in Tennessee. And so they get together once a month for dinner. And it just so happened, you know, I love it when God works things out, that they were meeting at the same restaurant that I was meeting to have dinner with my cousin. And so they came up and said hi, and they came over and we gave each other hugs, and we talked and chatted and had our pictures made. And so now let me say to Pat and Linda and Sharon and Barbara and Karen.
Wow.
Thank you. It was a great evening. It was good to see them, and it brought back some good memories. So that was one thing that happened. But I went drove over to North Carolina, where a lot of my family still lives. And when I was growing up, my dad had 9 brothers and 1 sister. And so I remember those days when we would have family reunions or holidays, or we just all get together. And so my dad had 9 brothers and 1 sister, I think I said, and they would all be there at my grandma's house. And so the house would be full and loud and rowdy. And the boys, the brothers, they were always trying to outdo the other by telling a story. And so, and of course, each one had a different version of it, but it was so much fun. It was so much fun to be there and to hear them and to laugh with them and to watch my grandma with them. My grandma was just a little woman, but her boys were all big. I mean, we're talking 6'2" and bigger, and she was barely 5 feet tall. But how she could keep them in line, and how much they loved her. But when I went back this time, one of my uncles, like I said, had passed away. So all that's left now is 1 brother and 1 aunt. And so it was really emotional to go back to that house and to know that it would not be like that again. I have so many memories, and somewhere I had read your cousins are your first best friends. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was true. I know what they're talking about, because my cousins, we grew up together, laughing and playing and running in the fields and listening to their stories, and it was just a fun time. But it was very emotional, and that had never happened to me before like that. To literally just be in tears when I left. Mm-hmm. So it was a good visit. I had a great time. I loved seeing my aunt and uncle, and another aunt. I got to see her. It was really good. We had a really good time. We had good weather, but it was also very, very sad. And I can't put my finger on why, unless it's just remembering that it will never be that way again. You know. Yeah.
Well, there was that old song, "Memories Like the Corner of My Mind." Misty water, colored memories. It's from way back. But that's what happens, I think, is those memories rest in the back, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a position where they come flooding forward. And you have the joy of the memories, but also the regret that more were not created.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and also it was that, of course, all of my cousins now, there's a lot of them, they're all married and they have children. Their children will not experience, even my children did not get to experience that, being with all of them. You know, there would be, I don't know, maybe 50, 55 at a time at my grandmother's house. And they would set up outside during the summer. They'd set up 4 and 5 tables and fill it with food. And there'd be people everywhere filling the porch and in the living room, sitting in the trees and under the trees and on the grass eating, and lots of good conversation. And, you know, it will never be like that again. So I feel very fortunate to have those memories and things that I can recall that happened and that took place. You know, and I am sure there will be more memories to be made, but it will not be quite like that.
Well, and what's interesting, though, Betty, is you probably don't, or maybe you do realize it, but your grandkids are going to have a similar story. You know, they're remembering the Christmas teas that you host and the memories that you're building, the aprons that you get them to all match. And I mean, you're just forever investing in the next generation, and you're giving them those same memories and legacy.
I hope so. That's why I like for them to take a lot of pictures. Mm-hmm. So when they forget, you can go back and look at your pictures and you can remember. At least that's what I do. Maybe other people have a better memory than I do, but I love going back and looking at the pictures, and I can go, oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah. This is what we did.
I didn't realize how similar our backgrounds are in that regard, because I don't think I've ever heard you share that, and nor have I really asked about that. But I left my home, too, at about 21 and then moved straight up here. So right from my parents' house to being uprooted to Alaska. So I've not really lived out being an adult back home. So I don't know, sometimes I struggle with almost reverting back to being a child in some regards when I go back there, just because that's where I left off. And so it's almost hard mentally to fast forward to being, I don't know, it's just kind of a trip each time I go back there.
I think what I find is just like you two, I was 19 when I left and came up here to live in Alaska. And because of our position as ministers, we didn't have finances to be able to go out for every single thing that happened. And I can remember actually the first Christmas that I got to share with my family again down at home, as you would say, was after my first daughter was born. No, it was after my second daughter was born. So it had been like 16 years before I'd been able to be home for Christmas to be with my family. And I feel that same thing is in that when I left home being 19, as you say, you left home as a child, and every time you go back, you're interacting differently. Mm-hmm. And the dynamics have changed. And your memories have changed because the family that remains have memories from the time you left to the time that you return to visit that you are not a part of.
Exactly.
And working through that sometimes can be very messy. And my mother just recently, she kept calling me my sister's name because she was having little problems with the thinking process. And she was going, you remember when we did this and we did this and we did this? And I go, no, Mom, I don't remember that. And she says, oh, yes, you do. You were with me. And she just kept going on. And then I realized she was thinking I was my sister. And so I just let her talk and let her process that because that was precious to her, even though I wasn't a part of it. But a lot of times I really regret that my daughters didn't get to interact with their cousins because all the cousins down in the States, they would get together. They'd spend time during the summer together. They would do special outings. They'd go road trips with the parents, all this type of thing. My girls didn't get to have that with that side of the family. And even then it was limited on the other side because my husband's family, all the kids lived in another location. Mm-hmm. And so we're different nowadays than we were 60 years ago because it used to be when you planted in a home, in a community, you stayed there. Mm-hmm. And we're so transient that we lose a lot of the value of the community.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons I like staying put. I might want to be gone for a little while, like for a month or so.
You mean like on a cruise?
On a cruise or somewhere during the winter where there's sunshine and warm weather, but I always want to come back home. Mm-hmm. I always want to come back home.
There's a different feeling. Mm-hmm. It's different. So. Mm-hmm.
Now, both of you have been through loss this year.
I have, yes, and I know Renee has as well.
What's the holidays looking like? What did they look like?
Well, for me, my family has been down south, the Washington, Oregon area. So the holiday isn't going to be altered a whole lot other than the knowledge and the vacancy in your heart. But I know that for my sister and the extended family down south, it's going to be a lot harder because she lost her husband. And her children, although they're adults, lost their father. And then my mother also passed within 3 weeks of Tim, my brother-in-law. And so they're experiencing far more upheaval because they're around them all the time.
Right.
Whereas because I've lived for 36 years outside of the family units per se, they only got to see them maybe once or twice a year if I was lucky. It's you know that it's happened, but that it hasn't changed how you get to see them because you never get to see them to begin with. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
So the season is different for them. And watching that and trying to stay connected with them in a way that will benefit and not harm and help them with the process.
Recently somebody posted something on Facebook, and after all these years, I finally thought, wow, that's it. That puts words and articulates kind of my feelings about the holidays because shortly after we relocated to Alaska, just 2 weeks after that, my mom passed away very unexpectedly. And she was very much the pillar of Christmas and the holidays. Of course, the moms are that anchor of the holidays. And so losing her, and, that was 17 years ago. And there's kind of a note on that. I've learned through that loss that really that mark of time means nothing because it's always just one thought away. It's not 17 years away. It's just right there.
Oh, that's really good.
And I don't know that you can realize that until you've experienced loss in that regard, and then you can relate. So when you hear somebody say they lost somebody 30 years ago, that sounds like a long time, but it's just one memory away, one little thought away that they remember that person. So anyhow, the holidays have always been a challenge for me to recreate that joy for my own family in the midst of really the holidays just being a reminder that that person's no longer there. And in that article kind of articulated that. But that's really been a challenge for me to do that as a mom and as a wife.
I think that anybody who's gone through a loss during the holiday times can experience that. It just robs them of the fundamental joy that they've experienced because of the memories, like what you said. And it is only a thought away. All you have to do is pick up that one ornament.
Exactly.
Well, really, it's all you have to do is just have a moment.
Yeah.
Just have one moment where you have any kind of thought. And I know this year, and I don't know a lot about grief except what I've experienced and been through, but I know that it's a journey and there's no set time for it to end. I don't know that it ever really ends. But I know this year, 2017, has been a very difficult year for my family, and I don't understand why. And it all relates back to their dad being gone. And so we're looking forward to 2018.
Right.
Hoping that it's better, praying that it's better.
Do you think that part of that difficulty comes with the time of life that we find ourselves?
It could be.
Because if you talk to your young adults, they don't have friends and family members dying around them all over the place. But the older that we get as an individual, all of our friends, people who have impacted our lives, our parents, our siblings, they also are getting older. And so the probability of their passing is much greater. So I think that we in the age compartment that we fit into at the moment are going to see that increased. Whereas our younger people, they're not experiencing it the same way. So hard for us this year may not have been as hard for them. Does that make sense?
Except for my younger daughter, she's really struggled this year.
Is she?
With missing her dad.
Well, that's understandable.
A lot. Even though it's been 6 years, I don't understand. Neither one of us understand. We've just tried to get through it.
Yeah.
And so we're looking forward to 2018, hoping it's a little bit easier.
I think 2018, 8 in the Bible or the numbers that are reflected spiritually in the kingdom of God. 8 is a number for the gate or open doors, new seasons. And so I'm hoping and praying that that's what we're going to see next year, is new seasons that are going to expand us, but strengthen us, challenge us, help us grow, and also face those things that need to be weeded out in our lives.
Very good. I don't know if I like the sound of it, but it's good.
Leave it to me to bring that
up. Do you like being weeded, Betty?
No, that's hard work. I've weeded a garden before, and that's really hard.
But what happens when the weeds are gone?
That's right.
You get this
new
wonderful
growth.
plants.
Exactly. New growth, new opportunities, new doors, ways to touch and be touched to affect lives.
Well, and I'm probably not going to articulate this as well as I would like to, but I was recently reading about how, a seed essentially has to die before it can be fertilized to then contribute to new growth. So maybe if we can use the loss that we've experienced in some regard to see that as an opportunity for new growth.
Well, what was beautiful about my mother's passing, not beautiful in that she passed, but the day before she passed, we had a birth in the family.
Oh,
and
my
so, here God brought in a baby, and she doesn't replace mom, but there's definitely an aspect of rejoicing that comes with that. And the interesting thing about it was 24 hours after she was born, she was not responding to sound whatsoever. And they were really concerned that it meant that she was deaf. And so in the hospital room, while we were gathered around my mom, I prayed with the grandma, which was my my brother's former wife. And we just prayed and rebuked that illness and asked the Lord to bring healing to the grandbaby that she will hear. And the next day we heard that she was cleared.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So even in the dying of the seed, new life can be brought forth as long as we hold on and grab hold of the promises of what God has given us.
Yeah. I also recently lost my grandmother, and this is turning into a very depressing show, but I'm going to try to bring bring this to some life, because on a positive note, there's something to be said for really investing time into those that you have. And so even though, there's thousands of miles that separated us, we really worked hard at maintaining a very, very close relationship. And so in that loss, many times you are experiencing the regret of not having more, but we definitely seized every phone conversation and every moment. And somehow that is very healing when you do lose them. So just a word of encouragement. We hear that all the time, but truly, use each day.
So let me ask you a question then, Cammie. What is some kind of a trait that your grandmother raised out of you, brought forth out of you, that she nurtured and challenged and developed with you? Is there something that you can think of that?
This is I'm not even going to think about this before I say it, and I hope I don't regret it later. But you know what? And I don't even know if this answers your question, Renee, but I have to pass this forward. And I've shared it with a few small groups of women. But what she gave to me was the ability to both hate my husband's feet and love him at the same time. She would go on that journey with me. And so we'd get on the phone and she's like, is this a day where you hate his feet? I'm like, yes, Grandma, it is. And she would take me through that. But then the next day when things had resolved or whatever silly thing it was, she was right there with me too. She didn't hold any of one day to the next. And so I've always wanted to pass that gift forward to other women, to have that person in your life because I think that's a hard thing for women to share, especially in marriage. You don't really want to share when you're having a rough day. Because then they'll have their thoughts that they carry forward about them. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's a gift she left with me.
I think it is because it helped you you were able to express. So you recognize the value of expressing the challenge that you're facing and the trust in someone who could help you process it.
Right.
And then she probably also taught you how to laugh at the terminology that we use to describe when we're having a challenge. Oh, it's a feet day.
That's right.
Stinky feet day.
That's right.
So I'm sure there's a lot of things that we don't even really stop to process that has developed in you because those moments where you could express freely, she would join with you with that. She probably laughed or got you to giggle a few times. And then the next day it was like, we start anew. It's a new day.
Yeah, it wasn't like, well, just yesterday you were saying this. We just started new, and she was right there on that
wonderful
journey. It really was. So, anyhow, I want to ask, did you want to share something, Betty?
No, I was just going to say 2018's coming.
Yes.
What do you make resolutions? Do either one of you make resolutions?
I did years ago, but once they never got fulfilled, I stopped doing it.
You're going to love what mine's going to be this year, Renee.
Okay.
I've already decided what it will be. And in fact, my husband's joining me on this. But here it is. I'm
Okay.
laying it out there. I'm publicly saying
for
this.
it.
I'm going to be on time.
Oh, no, really?
Yes.
So we get to hold you accountable?
That's
Is that
right.
what you're saying?
That's right.
Oh,
Yep.
this is going to be fun.
And, I heard someone once say that they're not late because they're sitting on the couch, just being lazy. It's just always trying to fit one more thing in, and those things just add up. But just trying to be respectful of other people's time and not try to fit so much in and make an effort to be on time. So
if you're always trying to fit one more thing in, are you supposed to get rid of one of those things you're trying to fit in?
potentially, I don't need to clean my countertop when I'm already running behind to get out the door.
You sound like me. You sound like me.
Be more conscious.
I quit making resolutions a long time ago.
Yeah.
Did
Because
you?
I don't keep them.
No.
And then I get so disappointed in myself. I do have a word, though. I have a new word.
A new one already?
I
Are
do.
we
Not the
out
lion
with the
anymore, huh?
lion?
It's not a lion no more. That one's done and past.
Oh, I can't wait to hear.
I don't know if do I want to tell you right now. I might want to wait till
you want to
January.
save it?
Oh, come on.
I think I'll
Share a
wait.
li- Oh, you're such a
I think
trooper.
I'll wait.
Listen, I wanted to ask you guys kind of an interesting question. Betty, you think about whether or not you're going to be obedient and share what your word is. But we kind of talked about a little bit, or I sent you guys the question and thought we might try to discuss it. But what is one thing that you've stopped doing in 2017? And what is something that you've kind of added into your life and started doing? Can you think of anything?
For me, that was a hard question because I could not for my life think of anything that I've gotten rid of. I'm sure there must be, but I don't know what
Talk
it is.
about weeding, right?
Yeah. I stopped filling up my calendar, and I started leaving white space. I was hearing all kinds of messages or people say, stop and smell the roses, so to speak. Pay attention to where you're at. Be present. And so I stopped filling my calendar up. I make an honest effort now to make sure that I have maybe 2 days, at least 2 afternoons or 2 mornings that I'm not doing anything, just in case.
Mm-hmm. That's wise.
Just in case.
I like it. It's important to leave margin for the unexpected, and instead of having everything.
Well,
so
you never know
scheduled.
what's going to come up. You know,
Yeah.
God might need you here, or He might need you there, and if I already have a commitment, you know, I can't do both. Or my kids might need me for something, and I don't want to have to cancel plans or rearrange, and sometimes that still happens because you don't know when the unexpected is going to happen.
Right.
But
when you get held up walking out of Pilates.
Uh-huh.
You just never know what's going to come
You
up.
just never know, and so I want to be there.
Yeah.
When I'm needed.
How about
That's
you,
good.
Cammie?
I was sharing this with Betty a little bit earlier, but one thing I can't say I've completely stopped doing this, but the awareness is there. And I don't know why the Lord asked me to look at this. If I can't connect it to a book or, a sermon or anything, but I'm sure it kind of was driven by something like that. But it's is to not share my opinion unless it's asked for. We as women can just get so caught up, and we think it's normal conversation to constantly share our opinion. But just in being aware of how often people actually ask for it is jaw-dropping. I think that, if you just bring that awareness, you'll find how often really you're asked what you think.
Well, it's definitely better, not necessarily practice that I always follow, but it's definitely better to allow for the open door than to bust through it.
Don't you think? And I think that at that point, if somebody's asking, then they're probably listening as well. And so what I've become aware of is when I start just sharing my opinion, they're not listening because they really didn't ask you what you
And
thought.
they don't care.
No.
And
it saves you words and stress. And it's really interesting when you start talking just a little bit less.
It kind of reminds me of Charlie Brown when he was hearing the adult speak, wah, 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 wah.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, and I don't know if maybe that what was driven is by I got tired of people sharing their opinion. Like, I did not ask you what you thought.
Is that why we've not been having coffee lately? She goes silent.
The truth comes out.
Definitely not. Yours is what opinion I always want to hear.
Keep telling me.
Oh, that's good. So that's one thing that you've stopped doing. What's one thing you started doing? Wait, did you share, Renee? Did you think of something?
The only thing I can think of is, but I'm not positive that it started with this year or if it started the end of last year, but my whole life in ministry, you're 24/7, you're on with ministry. And so you would find days that were technically your day off, but it never ended up being your day off. And this year, I'm pretty certain it started at the beginning of the year. All of a sudden, a light bulb went on, and I thought, you know what? This is ridiculous. I have to have a day of recharging. And so I've purposely made my first day of my day off is Fridays, usually. And so I've purposely made that I am going to be lazy in the morning. I'm going to chill out till 11, 12 o'clock, which is really hard for me.
That's why we're not having coffee.
Well, now
The truth is out
but
now.
if you called, I would do it because I love our time together.
Yes, I
I
do
love
too.
it because I get to share my opinion. How much more important is that?
And you have a captive audience.
Yeah, but see, I see that as friendship.
Yes.
I don't see that as a work in progress type of a thing, but. And so I have been really, well, maybe she is. No, I've been really working on making Friday my day off. Now, Saturday is supposed to be my day off, but I always work. And it helps, though, because I have all of Friday. It's just for me. It's me time. And I've got to have that. And I think everybody experiences that. We just have to teach ourselves to do so.
Why is it so hard for women to rest? Why is it so hard for us just to sit down maybe for 30 minutes a day and do nothing?
I think it's because God created us to be creators. I mean, we're the ones that carry new life in our womb. And we're the ones that provide in the house with everything that comes in. We make the meals, take care of the children. That's busy work a lot of times.
I think that's an interesting insight, but I also think, again, referencing that book, Simply Tuesday, Betty, that are you still working through that? Don't set it down. It's a great book. Is that we really live in a produce and ship society. We feel like we've got to have every moment be productive. And we kind of talked about that a couple shows back, but that can even come down to even just raising your kids, feeling like every conversation's got to have an intention, and, trying to raise a Christian family. That can be overwhelming and stressful as well, and instead of just sitting and being lazy with the kids versus having a mission.
Is it possible too is because we find our value in those things, and
Absolutely.
we try to prove our value to other people, that we are productive in society, that we are great mothers, we're great wives, we're great adults, we're great parents. I mean, all of those things. And so if we don't do something that's visible by everybody else, then we may be perceived as being lesser than.
Ooh, that's deep.
That's another show.
Sorry. This is something that just 2 days ago I was reading in the Bible, and this came up in my spirit, and I was thinking about it and thinking about my family and extensions. And then within just a few minutes, I get a text from a friend, and it's the same exact thing.
Really? I think we need to come back and have another show soon and just talk through that. I mean,
One
it's
more
definitely
enlightening and fun.
That's right.
Well, let's be sure that was, that question was kind of off the topic, but we want to wish everybody a happy New Year.
Yes, may it be a blessed one.
And to be safe.
Yes, absolutely.
And a very blessed New Year.
Yes. Thank you so much, Renee, for joining us and just having this fun conversation. Well, I mean,
Kind
it's
of
fun
fun.
in parts, right? we hope that somebody out there related to either the loss or the joy. We kind of covered a round of topics there. But we do want to thank you so much for joining us for another Living Well program. And again, you can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage, as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. We thank you so much for setting aside 30 minutes to join us today. And please do tune in again next Wednesday.